Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ayah number 231 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Let us continue بحول wa quwwatih. قال الله تعالى: وإذا طلقتم النساء فبلغن أجلهن فأمسكوهن بمعروف أو سرحوهن بمعروف ولا تمسكوهن ضرارا لتعتدوا ومن يفعل ذلك فقد ظلم نفسه ولا تتخذوا آيات الله هزوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم وما أنزل عليكم من الكتاب والحكمة يعظكم به واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله بكل شيء عليم. So we are still on the topic of divorce, and this ayah continues directly from ayah 230 in its topic of discussion. It says, when you have divorced the women and they have reached their ajal, meaning to say they have completed their waiting period. Previously, we were told that the waiting period is 3 quru, which is 3 menstrual cycles. Now at this stage we have a fiqhi difference of opinion. Some scholars say that this ayah means when they come close to finishing their waiting period. Because after they finish their waiting period, the husband cannot amsikuhunna, keep them back. From imsak, which means to grab hold of something or to seize something. So it says keep them back bima'ruf, on a reasonable basis, so that he takes her back with a view to living with her in a kind and honorable manner. So they say that it means when she is close to finishing her waiting period, because afterwards the husband has no right to take her back. She is separated from him. Other scholars say that no, it literally means when she has finished her waiting period, then after that waiting period has finished, the husband can decide to take her back or to let her go. Of course, he is not allowed to tarry in this decision. It has to be immediate. The Hanbali scholars say that if she takes the bath from that 3rd menstrual cycle, then at that point he has no choice. She is separated whether he likes it or not. But before she takes a bath, he can take her back. The words of the ayah tend to favor this second opinion because it is the apparent meaning of the ayah. And the ayah says, وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا, do not keep them back out of dirar, harming them. From darar, which means harm, so dirar is to harm someone else. It is mansub bil-fatha, diraran, because it is a maf'ul li-ajlihi, the passive participle, which tells you why the verb is being done. So why is the husband keeping her back? In order to harm her. They also say that dirar could be seen in the i'rab as a masdar in place of the hal. So then it would read, do not keep them back while you are harming them, as in mudarrin. And both opinions are acceptable. Anyway, many of the famous mufassirin have said that he should not take her back in order to stop her from marrying someone else. We previously did mention that the condition for the husband to take his wife back in the muraja'ah is islah. He needs to rectify the affair. There was a problem which led him to divorcing the wife. He needs to make islah. He needs to rectify any problems. If he does not have that in mind, it is impermissible for him to take the wife back. So yes, the muraja'ah, taking the wife back, is the right of the husband. However, it has this condition, which many people may not be aware of. He says, لِتَعْتَدُوا. Now, this lam can be lam al-ta'lil, but it appears here, it is not the lam al-ta'lil, the lam for justification, that is to say the reason why the verb is happening, but it appears it is lam lil-aqiba. It is the lam which tells you what will be the result of the verb. So in other words, if you keep her back in order to harm her, the result of that would be لِتَعْتَدُوا. You would be transgressing the limits. From i'tida, which means to be an aggressor or to transgress the limits. The verb ta'tadu is mansub bihadf al-nun because there is an an which is hidden, so it would read li an ta'tadu, but the an is mahdhuf, it is not written or read, it is implied. And he says whoever does that, he has zalama, transgressed or wronged against his own self. Like we said before, any sin is a transgression against your own self, because you are the one who is going to suffer the effects of the sin, not anyone else. And he says, وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا, do not take, this is a nahi, a prohibition, آيَاتِ اللَّهِ, the signs of Allah, هُزُوًا, this means as a mockery. Now the ayat mentioned here refers to the rules and regulations of Allah Jalla wa Ala, that which He has sent down. And so they are part of the ayat of Allah, because He has sent these rules and regulations down, just like He has sent all His other ayat down for mankind to know about and reflect on. So basically the ayah means to tell us, do not take the rules and regulations of Allah as a mockery. Rather, you need to take them seriously and work with them in earnest. And some examples are given here from some Mufassirin. They say it means that a man divorces his wife and says, oh, I was just joking. Or maybe he frees a servant and says, oh, I was just joking. There is a time and a place for humor, but the rules and regulations of Allah are not that time and place. And he says, وَاذْكُرُوا, remember the ni'mah of Allah upon you. This is guiding you to al-Islam. Otherwise, ni'mah means every type of goodness and blessing. And remember, مَا أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ, what He has sent down on you, مِنَ الْكِتَابِ, from the book. This refers to the Quran. وَالْحِكْمَةِ translates to wisdom, but it refers to the Sunnah of the Prophet, because both have been sent down to us for our guidance. And most of the details of the rules and regulations are taken from the Sunnah, not from the Quran. So even if we say that the hikmah refers to the rules and regulations of the Sharia, then this would definitely be referring to the Sunnah, because like we said, most of the ahkam shar'iyya come from the Sunnah. Okay, let's reflect on this particular ayah. We find that in a divorce, the woman is not immediately separated from the husband. Rather, there is a waiting period. And the waiting period is the case most of the time. There are exceptions. So if a divorce happens before the marriage being consummated, then there is no waiting period. And again, the detail of this really is for the fiqh sessions. And we take that if the divorce is raj'i, meaning the first two divorces, then the man can take his wife back. That is his right at the end of the waiting period. Now, like we said, there's a difference of opinion as to whether this ayah means she comes close to the waiting period finishing, or literally when the waiting period finishes. What is apparent from the ayah, like we said, is that the waiting period has finished, and then the man has the right to either take her back or let her go, and that he needs to make this choice pretty much immediately. And many other scholars say no. As soon as she finishes the waiting period, so let's say in our case if it's the 3 menstrual cycles, when she finishes that, when she finishes those 3 menstrual cycles, then that is it, the point of no return. The man cannot take her back. He has to take her back before the 3 menstrual cycles finish. We take from this ayah that whatever choice the husband makes, whether it is to take her back or whether it is to let her free, it must be in a kind, cordial and professional manner, without any vulgar language or behavior. We find from this ayah that it is haram to keep the wife back in order to harm her. And if one does do that, then in reality he is harming his own self. As we said, all types of sin is self-oppression. We find from this ayah that it is haram to take any sign of Allah as a mockery, even though the ayah is referring to the rules and regulations, which are also from the ayat of Allah. But of course the words are general, so all types of ayat must not be taken as a mockery, whether it is ayat kawniyah, so these are the universal signs, such as the sunrise, sunset, the sun, the moon, the celestial bodies, the animal kingdom. All of these natural phenomena are ayat of Allah. Or whether it be ayat shar'iyah, so these would be ayat of the Quran, and also miracles performed at the hands of the Prophet, such as the moon splitting and so on. All of these must not be taken as a mockery. However, it's normally the ayat shar'iyah that we would expect to be mocked, not the ayat kawniyah, because even the kuffar revere the ayat kawniyah. Sure, they may not attribute it to Allah Jalla wa Ala, but they still study it and revere the ayat kawniyah, the universal affairs and the laws of science and so on. But as for the ayat shar'iyah, then these have been long mocked. And you may even find people identifying as Muslims, saying things like certain ahkam of the Sharia are not applicable or appropriate for the modern age. And no doubt that this is kufr, which takes one beyond the fold of Islam. Because if what they're saying is indeed true, that means that Allah is not a true deity, because here He is giving us certain rules and regulations which are not appropriate. That means He is not all-wise and all-knowing. And if that's the case, then He's not a true deity. So you see, the logical conclusion of what these people say, it is enormous, and it is kufr. One may argue that even disobeying Allah Jalla wa'ala is a mockery of the laws of Allah. Why is this? Because when you do not obey the laws of Allah, then you are taking them lightly, and taking them lightly is a type of mockery. Now it will not be a type of mockery which takes you out of the fold of Islam, because this mockery is not ideological. It is rather a disobedience based on desires. And that does not take you out of the fold of Islam. Rather, it is the ideological type of mockery which would kick you out of the fold of Islam. You could say that any type of sin is also a type of shirk, because you have given your desires precedence over the laws of Allah. So it's like you're obeying your desires as you would obey Allah. And so you're sharing. And so you're putting your desires on the same level as Allah, and that would be shirk. So yes, you could argue that's a type of shirk, but not one which takes you out of the fold of Islam, because it is not based on ideological shirk and a belief that your desire is a God, but rather it is a sin based on desires, which one can succumb to. So it is shirk as understood liberally, but not one which would take you out of the fold of Islam. And we know this because we know that Allah Jalla wa'ala will forgive unrepentant sinners. So they cannot be kuffar, because we know at the same time that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah cannot forgive the kuffar. He has made this haram on His own self. We also take from this ayah the obligation of always remembering the favors that Allah Jalla wa'ala has done to you. It is impossible to enumerate all of them, but certainly there are some which would stick out to you, and they should be remembered and thanked. We take from this ayah that the whole Sharia of Allah Jalla wa'ala is hikmah, wisdom, because this is exactly what He calls it, what He has sent down to you from the book, meaning the Quran, and the hikmah. And yet the context of this ayah is all about rules and regulations pertaining to the divorce. So these people who say that aspects of the Sharia are not applicable in the modern day and age are actually saying that this Sharia is not hikmah, and are belying this particular ayah and similar ayat to this. And another point of benefit that we may take from this word hikmah is that supposing there is a rule of the Sharia that we do not understand the hikmah or the wisdom of, then we can be rest assured that even if we do not know the wisdom, there is some type of wisdom. And we do not need to have any sleepless nights just because we do not know what the wisdom is. We also take from the ayah that the Quran and the rules and regulations that Allah has sent down is for our admonition, because the word is يَعِظُكُمْ بِهِ. He preaches you and gives you admonition bihi, with it, meaning with the Quran and the hikmah. So the whole point about the maw'idha, about the preaching and the admonition, is to direct people to that which will benefit them and to ward from them that which would harm them. We may also take from this ayah the obligation of having taqwa of Allah Jalla wa'ala, as we have spoken about many times before. And also we know from this ayah that Allah is knowledgeable of everything. So from this it follows that we ought to obey every single rule and regulation of Allah, because if He is the most knowledgeable, then He knows what He is talking about, and He knows what is in our best interest. That's the whole point about being knowledgeable. A person who is ignorant does not know what is in our best interest. And the other point about Allah's name Alim, knowledgeable, is that He knows what we are doing, and He will reward us for our righteous actions and will punish us for our unrepentant evils. Ayah 232. وَإِن طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَبَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ فَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ أَن يَنكِحْنَ أَزْوَاجَهُنَّ إِذَا تَرَاضَوْا بَيْنَهُم بِالْمَعْرُوفِ ذَلِكَ يُوعَظُ بِهِ مَن كَانَ مِنكُمْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ ذَلِكُمْ أَزْكَى لَكُمْ وَأَطْهَرُ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So still continuing on with the theme of divorce, when you have divorced the women, meaning your wives, and they have reached their ajal, the waiting period has finished. So this beginning ayah is talking about the husbands divorcing their wife. Then he says, فَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ, do not make adl of them. Now this prohibition is directed to the wali of the woman, normally the husband. So this verb adala means to restrict somebody's movements and freedoms and to prevent them. It has that idea, restriction and prevention. What it refers to here is do not prevent these women from yankihna, marrying, azwajahunna, their former husbands, meaning to say the husbands who previously divorced them, and let's say that the woman and the previous husband want to get back together, then the wali of the woman should not prevent her from doing so. If both of them are happy with each other and there is mutual consent. Bil ma'ruf, on reasonable terms, what this means is that they agree to get back together with a new marriage contract, with all the conditions of a contract being respected. And in addition to that, that they agree to live with each other, respecting each other's rights and living honorably. So if that's the case, then the wali of the woman is not allowed to keep her back. This ayah came down in response to the Sahabi Ma'aqil ibn Yasar radiallahu an, who gave his sister in marriage. The husband divorced his sister and the iddah finished. And after some time, they wanted to get back together. And Ma'aqil ibn Yasar did not allow it. He felt that the husband's chance was up. However, his sister and the other man, they genuinely wanted to get back together. And so Allah Jalla wa Ala sends down this ayah telling Ma'aqil ibn Yasar and all others in his position that this is impermissible to deny someone a proper marriage contract as long as there is nothing haram in it. If the man and the woman are resolved to living with each other honorably, then so be it. Who are we to stop them? He says, ذَلِكَ, that, meaning that rule, يُعَظُ بِهِ, is something to be taken an admonition from, as in something to be benefited from. Remember, a maw'idha is that which benefits you. He says, ذَلِكُمْ, that is, meaning that rule, أَزْكَى لَكُمْ, it is azka. From zakah, meaning to increase. So this is azka for you, ism tafdil. It is more of an increase for you, that is, it increases you in your righteous works. وَأَطْهَرْ, from tahara, purification, it is more purifying for you, so it purifies you of your sins. That is, if you were to disobey, you would be sinful. So conversely, if you were to obey, you would not be sinful. So of course, obedience is purer for you. And Allah knows and you do not know. Okay, let's reflect on this ayah. We may take that even if the iddah period finishes, it is still possible for the former husband and wife to get back together with a new marriage contract as long as they are resolved to living honorably with each other. Of course, it's a given that this would be before the 3 divorces. And we take that the wali of the woman is not allowed to prevent her from marrying her former husband, because the choice is the woman's choice, as long as the bridegroom is of a sound character and deen. From this ayah, we take that a woman does not marry her own self off, otherwise this prohibition would be meaningless. Rather, we say it is the wali of the woman who marries her to the husband. We take from this ayah that rida, contentment, is a vital ingredient in marriage. No adult of sound mind is allowed to be married unless they are content. We find that the one who truly believes in Allah and the last day is the one who will take admonition from the rules and regulations of Allah. As for the kafir, then the ahkam shar'iyah are not going to have any effect on his heart. We also find from this ayah that obeying the ahkam shar'iyah is both azka and athhar for you. So azka has this idea of increasing you in your righteous actions and your iman, and athhar has this idea of you avoiding evil actions and evil consequences. And finally, when Allah says that He knows and we do not know, then it means that these ahkam shar'iyah are based on knowledge, and they are based on what is more beneficial to us. If we were just left to our own devices, we would implement laws that are more harmful to us than beneficial. And this is why we submit to Allah Jalla wa Ala, rather than submitting to our own whims. Wallahu a'lam.